these truths to be self-evident.
That all men are created equal.
As a member of Congress, I get to have a lot of really interesting people in the office. Experts on what they're talking about.
This is the podcast
for insights into the issues.
China, bioterrorism, Medicare for all. In-depth discussions.
Breaking it down into simple terms. We hold
these truths. We hold these truths.
With Dan Crenshaw.
The Eagle has landed.
Sitrep 4, the news from January 3rd to January 8th. Hope you all are enjoying our new podcast series, the Sitrep, the Situation Report, where you're just getting the news. You don't have to go read a bunch of other stuff. You can just listen to my podcast, in addition to the great guests that we have once a week. Okay, in congressional news, the first bill to pass the 119th Congress, well, the House at least, is the Laken Riley Act. So what is this? This is the Laken Riley Act because it's named after the young University of Georgia student who was murdered during a jog by an illegal alien from Venezuela. It requires the detention of migrants arrested for theft, for burglary, larceny, and shoplifting, kind of common sense stuff. Her killer, Jose Antonio Ibarra, avoided a conviction on shoplifting after being sent to a diversion program, whatever that is. Now, given the proliferation of such cases, illegals evading deportation and subsequently harming Americans, this legislation mandates that the federal government detain and deport all illegals that are convicted of or confess to these crimes. And the bill actually passed with a pretty hefty majority. We had 48 Democrats actually join Republicans and support it. It passed with 264 yeas and 159 nays. Laken Riley's birthday would have been Friday, January 10th. And that's the same day the Senate will hopefully take up this bill. It's important to know what current law is, because you might be wondering why this isn't already the norm. And current law requires mandatory detention only for persons who are criminally convicted or admit to having committed serious crimes. This bill amends the Immigration and Nationality Act to add these property crimes to the list of offenses that must result in detainment and deportation. Now let's talk about the politics of this. The Democrats that voted against the bill cite the bill as inherently anti-immigrant. They don't really go into further detail than that. This is kind of the usual talking point anytime we vote on stuff like this. They say it opens the path for DACA recipients to be deported. I guess they're right. I mean, if they commit crimes, yeah, it does open up the path for them to be deported, but they don't commit crimes. Critics also fear migrants could be placed in detention without due process, and that the bill is just too tough. It's too mean. In other words, it's an arrest for shoplifting or simple theft doesn't warrant deportation in their minds. Now, again, the Republican answer to that would be, well, they've actually committed two crimes. You know, it's the illegal entry is a crime, and then the additional crime of whether it's shoplifting or whatever it is. Some key senators have already stated their support for, some key Democrat senators have already stated their support for the bill. Fetterman from Pennsylvania, you know, let's just be honest, he's been kind of awesome for the last year or so on a lot of issues. I believe Gallego from Arizona as I said, he would co-sponsor it along with Senator Peters from Michigan. That doesn't put us over the top. You need 60 votes in the Senate to actually get this through. Right now, that's 56 yes votes. So one of the strategies that Thune might use, now Senator Thune is the new Senate Majority Leader, replacing Mitch McConnell. One of the strategies he might use is to put it on the floor this week just to see who votes no, right? Just and then see what it might take to get them to vote yes. That's a strategy. A lot of times leadership doesn't like to put bills onto the floor if they know they don't have the votes yet. And there's an honest debate onto whether that's a good strategy or not. Sometimes it's good just to put people on the record and see what happens. You know, you can always bring it back to the floor. I mean, because there's Democrats that are in red states. I mean, let's look at Georgia. Georgia should have 2 Republican senators, but it does not. And of course, there's a long history as to why it does not, but it doesn't. It has 2 Democrat senators that could easily be ousted in the right timing. So that's Warnock and Ossoff. So maybe we could get them. Maybe Cortez Masto from Nevada. We'll see. This bill was introduced by Mike Collins from Georgia. Laken Riley was his constituent. Little background on how on some legislative sausage making, if you will. This is the kind of bill that never made it through a committee. And you would hear about regular order where a bill must be introduced, go through a committee, go through a markup, get voted on by a committee, get passed out by a committee, and then it goes through leadership who then puts it on the floor. This bill never did that. A lot of people complain about the lack of regular order, of course, until it's their bill. And we see that a lot. And frankly, that's okay. I don't get a lot of heartburn over something if it's a good bill that doesn't necessarily go through regular order. It's a expedited process, and this is one of the first things we wanted to do in our new Congress. Well, it is the first thing we did in our new Congress. One of the things we do to even establish a new Congress is to set up is to vote on a rules package. So what's a rules package? Well, it establishes the structure and procedures for the House, and that includes which committees will exist, how the House operates, the threshold for removing a speaker. It used to be one motion to vacate. Now it's 8 people have to sign on to a motion to vacate. So is that right? 8? 9 total. 9 total. 9 total. Yeah, 9 total have to have the motion to vacate. So that adds a little bit of stability. It sets the rules and the order for how bills might be prioritized for consideration. It has little things in there like dress code. There was one of my friends, a member who was totally out of dress code just this week, and I was like, well, they're going to come after you because we have these House staff on the floor who will actually come up to you and tell you, hey, if you're not wearing a tie and a coat, you need to leave the floor. You can't have drinks on the floor. It's just things like that. And he noted, well, there's no rules passed yet, so they can't say anything. So it's literally as detailed as that, and you can have those kind of funny situations. But once that rules package is passed, it still takes several months sometimes, hopefully a lot less than several months. But it still takes time for committee chairpersons and members to be appointed, and this is done through our steering committee. It's done differently on the Democrat and Republican side. That's a whole other civics lesson for you. And that delays our ability to do legislative business, all the more reason to pass something like the Laken Riley Act just by leadership putting it on the floor. And so the Laken Riley Act never went through that legislative process because, it really can't. The committees just aren't ready for it yet. And so this is why it happened. Now, there was a bunch of other stuff in the rules package too, actually 12 other bills. The rules for those bills were actually put into the House rules package, again, as a way to expedite 12 specific bills just to get us going. The whole idea behind this is to get us moving, get the ball rolling while committees are kind of unable to function. Like they're not fully staffed yet. We're hiring people. People are moving around to different places. New members are here. You've got to assign these new members to these committees. Subcommittee chairmen have just been in place. We've just had those meetings. Select committees like the Intelligence Committee, like one of the most important committees in Congress, it's technically a select committee. It's not even real yet. I can't go get my classified briefings right now because it doesn't exist. It technically does not exist as a committee. We have to vote on that. So it's a little strange, but that's how it works. So the rules package actually included 12 other bills, meaning rules for the bills. So I'm going to give you a quick civics lesson on what any of this means. It's confusing. I'm sorry. This is why we have a rules committee. And everyone's like, what the heck does the rules committee do? Well, it establishes the rules for the bill. And those rules can be things like, is it open to amendments? How much time will there be for debate? That's what the rule package does. It's a very powerful committee because every single bill has to go through it. The only bills that don't go through the rules committee are bills that we call suspension bills. Why would we call them suspension bills? Because we're suspending the rules of debate. We're suspending the rules in general. And we're doing that because you have 2/3 of the House that will vote for it. You can only bypass rules, meaning the rules that govern the structure of debate around the bill, if you have 2/3 of members voting for it. So we do this all the time with suspension votes. Because it's something everyone agrees on, so we just put them on the floor, right? When I say we have fly-in votes, like we're flying in for our first day of session, it's always a suspension vote, like a totally non-controversial bill that everybody agrees on, and it's just getting members to show up. Like that's the whole point. So we added 12 bills, essentially, not bills, but 12 rules for bills into this first rules package. I'm sorry if this is confusing. I'm doing the best I can to explain the odd nature of parliamentary procedure to you all. 6 of the 12 forthcoming pieces of legislation would amend border and immigration laws, and which is obviously a big focus of the incoming Trump administration. Here's a quick rundown. Number 1, the gender of athletes competing in college and university sports would be determined by that which they were declared at the time of birth under Title IX law. I know, crazy stuff, right? Makes sense. Number 2, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary would be required to have federal law enforcement arrest any illegal immigrant who has been charged, not just convicted, of theft. So that goes to the Laken Riley Act. Number 3, any illegal immigrant encountered attempting to enter illegally at the border would be barred from being released into the country if he or she had a conviction or has been charged with a sex offense or domestic violence. Additionally, a person with that charge or conviction with the U.S. would be susceptible to deportation. Number 4, the assault by an illegal immigrant of a police officer at the local, state, tribal, or federal level would be grounds for deportation. 5, sanctuary cities and states or jurisdictions that do not cooperate with federal immigration law enforcement would receive no federal funding intended to benefit such aliens. Number 6, any U.S. citizen or immigrant arrested for intentionally fleeing a federal police officer while driving would face criminal and immigration charges. Number 7 is where we get into a different category of bills. Ensuring healthcare practitioners exercise the proper degree of care in the case of a child who survives an abortion or attempted abortion. So we've been voting on this for a long time. We've tried to put Democrats on. This is the Born Alive bill. Again, it just makes total common sense, but you'd be amazed that Democrats actually still vote against this. Number 8, sanction the International Criminal Court for its efforts investigating, arresting, detaining, or prosecuting a protected person from the U.S. or allied nations. We could do a whole course on what the ICC is and why we believe it doesn't have the jurisdiction it does. We won't get in that today. Number 9, the Internal Revenue Service would issue special rules for certain residents of Taiwan who earn income from sources within the U.S. Number 10, the National Voter Registration Act would be changed to require proof of U.S. citizenship in order to register to vote in elections for federal office. Of course. 11, the Controlled Substances Act would be updated to include and schedule fentanyl-related substances. This is a good one. This one, for instance, is part of our recommendation from the Cartel Task Force. And we almost got it out of my committee on ENC, but Democrats don't like it because it involves mandatory minimums, and they have heartburn over that kind of thing, even though we all know fentanyl is killing people, and anyone who's dealing fentanyl should face the death penalty. Let's be honest. Number 12, temporary moratoriums on the use of hydraulic fracturing would be banned. Okay, so this is a pro oil and gas one. So these are all things we want to hit the ground running with, like keep our promises to the American people. That's why you put these 12 rules of the bills in the overall rules package. Again, it's not putting 12 bills in the rules package. You have to vote on these bills later. It's just getting the rules set up. And the reason you do this is because it's an expediting exercise. You don't need another rules vote in the committee and on the floor, because that's what happens with each one of these bills usually. So you're expediting the consideration of this. There's of course precedent for this. In the last Congress under McCarthy did the same thing. The bill HR 23 to rescind certain balances made available to the Internal Revenue Service. That was, remember the 80,000 IRS agents, and one of McCarthy's promises was we're going to get rid of that right away. So that was in that first rules package. Suspending the entry of illegal aliens, prohibiting the Secretary of Energy from sending petroleum products from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to China, for instance. Remember, because back then Biden was taking a bunch of oil out of the Strategic Reserve in an effort to try and reduce oil prices. Of course, it didn't work, and it was super annoying, and we were mad about it. And there was a bunch of other ones that they used. So there's a lot of precedent for this. In other domestic news, Biden bans new oil and gas drilling along most U.S. coasts. Biden, stop it. On Monday, President Biden issued an executive order banning future offshore oil and gas drilling across over 625 million acres of U.S. coastal waters. including the eastern seaboard, the Pacific coast, eastern Gulf of Mexico, soon to be the Gulf of America, and the northern Bering Sea. While the move solidifies his environmental legacy, whatever the heck that is, critics argue it symbolically targets non-critical areas. I guess that's good news, as 97% of the U.S. offshore production remains unaffected. Now, still, Republican leaders, including incoming President Trump, vowed to reverse the ban. Unfortunately, that's going to be difficult. It's a ridiculous ban, but reversing it might be more challenging than we think because of the way the law is written. The Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act it gives clear authority for presidents to enact bans, but does not give clear authority for presidents to overturn bans. Now, industry groups are raising concerns about this, even though we're not drilling in a lot of these places. The point is, you might drill in these places one day. You can't just take stuff off the table. There's plenty of places around the world we thought we would never drill, and then we drill there. We get billions of barrels of oil from that. I mean, look, I don't care how you think about energy. The fact is, you're going to need more energy in the future for an increasing population that demands more energy, especially with the tech industry growing and AI and all that. You just need more energy. This is not something that's going to change. Notably, the executive order does not stop new drilling in the central and western part of the Gulf. Again, Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America? Who knows? And that accounts for 97% of U.S. offshore gas production. So it's not catastrophic in the near term, but in the long term, it could be. You never know. In other news, we might have some buyers for TikTok. I've been waiting. I mean, it's a good investment. As much as I hate TikTok, because it's a Chinese-owned spy device trying to wreak havoc on American minds, I still think it's an amazing product, and I would just like some Americans to actually own it. And the second they own it, that's when you'll see me doing TikTok dances. Maybe not dances, but I'll be on the. I should never do a TikTok dance, but I'll be on the platform. Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank is reportedly considering the acquisition of TikTok, collaborating with Dodgers owner Frank McCourt. Obviously, you need a pretty hefty group of investors because we're talking about a $60 billion valuation or potentially $100 billion valuation if you include the intellectual property, meaning the algorithms associated with TikTok. So however they figure that out, I don't know. I think TikTok has said they would never sell the IP, but hey, you know what? At $40 billion, you might want to sell the IP. Who knows? Or maybe they don't because they don't want us to see that they've actually been using that algorithm to actually destroy American minds like we thought they were. That might be why they don't want to sell it. It might literally be priceless. In the end, I think some good American engineers could probably come up with a similar algorithm and own TikTok. We'll see what happens because the deadline for the TikTok ban is January 19th. It's coming up rather quickly. We talked about this in the last episode a little bit where President Trump was offering an amicus brief to try and delay or come up with a political solution. Look, I'm still of the mind that TikTok is very dangerous, and if it gets banned, it gets banned. Sorry, but we'll have to take our business elsewhere, and there's plenty of other places to take it. The Supreme Court is scheduled to hear oral arguments actually very soon, January 10th. That's this Friday. Now in global news, Trump wants to buy Greenland again. Remember he was laughed at for this? It was like this big joke. There's precedent for this. President Trump. It's like some form of a pattern here. Also wanted to buy Greenland. Now, why the heck would you want to buy Greenland? Greenland is not green. It's full of ice. Iceland is very nice. It's full of green. But Greenland does have some obvious strategic value. It's full of critical minerals. It's full of oil and gas. It has easy access to the Arctic, which will increasingly become a strategic location in grand competition with places like Russia, China. So it is not a crazy idea, even though Trump was vilified for being crazy for even thinking about it. And he's pretty serious about it. Don Jr. just arrived in Nuuk. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Nuuk, Greenland. I don't even know I guess they speak Danish because technically it's owned by the Danes, or Denmark. Nuuk, Greenland. He arrived on Trump Force One. I didn't know they called it that. That's kind of awesome. He was accompanied by incoming White House officials, Sergio Gore and James Blair and Charlie Kirk. They described the trip as personal, They had no scheduled meetings with Greenlandic government officials. They shared some photos on social media, just expressed admiration for Greenland's beauty. And back at Mar-a-Lago, President Trump has reiterated his interest in buying it. At what price? I have no idea. He said his desire to buy it, and he said we need to make Greenland great again. And he also suggested Denmark might not have the legal rights to Greenland. I don't know the background on that. Now, Denmark, of course, has said that it's not for sale, but come on, put a price on anything it could be for sale. Now, again, why does he want it? Rare earth minerals exist there. There's like potentially 17.5 billion untapped barrels of oil, potentially 148 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Like, this is not a crazy idea. And again, several strategic shipping routes around the Arctic Circle. On the national security level, Greenland is also part of what is known as the Giuk Gap, the G-I-U-K Gap. It's a crucial naval choke point between Greenland, Iceland, and the UK. And this was really closely watched during the Cold War. So in recent years, Russia has increased submarine patrols and exercises in the area. It's not crazy. Do I want it to be a 51st state? No, but whatever. It can be a territory. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But, Denmark, come on. Let's play ball here. I don't even know why Denmark has it. But you know what? We'll come back to you with that history. All right. In other news, Trump says he's going to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico. Can he do that? I mean, sure he can. Doesn't mean other countries have to abide by it. There's something called the International Hydrographic Organization, and both the U.S. and Mexico are members, and that works to ensure that the world's seas, oceans, and navigable waters are surveyed and charted uniformly, and also names some of them. So, there has to be some agreement there. He's not making a bad argument. I think there's more of America along the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, there must be more of America. Clearly, just look at a map. Along the Gulf of Mexico than there is Mexico. The reason it's called the Gulf of Mexico, well, it was named that because the Spaniards settled the place. I mean, they settled Mexico, they settled this area, and it was named the Gulf of Mexico, and it just has been that way ever since. Now, you can change things a little easier when a landmark or a body of water is within a country's boundaries. In 2015, President Barack Obama approved an order from the Department of Interior to rename Mount McKinley, the highest peak in North America, to Denali, a move that Trump also says he wants to reverse. Okay. In other news, Iran has pulled out troops from Syria, as they should. I mean, it's not going well for Iran. Iranian forces have significantly withdrawn from Syria following the collapse of Assad regime in December. That marks a major blow to Tehran's regional influence. Syria was a pivotal element of Iran's supply route and served as a vital land bridge to Hezbollah in Lebanon, facilitating the transport of weapons, personnel, and resources. So you got Hezbollah that's basically destroyed. You've got Syria that has been taken over by a group called HTS, and we've gone over HTS, and don't make me recall the acronym once again. But these are Sunni extremists that banded together and took down the Assad regime, and now are in talks, as went over in our last episode, in talks with the international community. They're going to be in power most likely for the next few years. And until there's elections, as they say there will be. We already went over that. But the important part here is Iran withdrawing, and it underscores the failure of Iran's longstanding strategy to use Syria as a strategic base for proxy operations and a transit hub for arms transfers to Hezbollah and other allied groups. So this is an example of Iran's diminished influence, and we'll see how it affects Middle Eastern affairs. Let's talk about Lebanon for a second. I've personally done some operations in Lebanon. It's a wonderful place when it's not in complete chaos, which is always, and it's actually still kind of a wonderful place. With the withdrawal of Iranian troops from Syria has weakened Hezbollah's regional influence. That's really good for Lebanon, and it's good for America, which contributes to its shift towards less polarizing candidates in Lebanon's presidential race as it seeks to adapt to changing geopolitical dynamics. Real quick background here. The Lebanese constitution requires power sharing between Sunni, Shia, and Christian sects. And I forget which one has to be the president. Maybe, come on real quick, Claire. I think the president or the prime minister has to be. So
the president is reserved for a Maronite Christian.
Okay. And what else? What else? Where is that the only requirements?
I can look.
Okay, well, they have an interesting power agreement, and they haven't been able to form a government in quite a long time. So Lebanon's parliament is preparing for a pivotal presidential election after a year-long vacancy. Like I said, they haven't been able to form a real government. And this shifts in regional balance, and Hezbollah's weakening. Remember, Israel killed all of them with some blow-up walkie-talkies. Just remember that. And of course, the conflict with Israel, Assad's waning influence. This has completely reshaped the political dynamic in Lebanon. The presidency is still contested. It's reserved for a Maronite Christian. So a Muslim cannot be president in Lebanon, but other key points are reserved for Muslims, and Claire's about to tell us.
So the prime minister is always a Sunni Muslim, and the speaker of the parliament is always Shia.
Okay, so that's how they agreed to it long. I don't even know when they agreed to this long ago. I mean, they've had civil war after civil war after civil war, but this is how it is in Lebanon. It's a super interesting civics lesson. So there's a lot going on right there. As far as America's role in Lebanon, it's important for people to understand we have a very close relationship with the LAF. That's the Lebanese Armed Forces. I mean, you'll see Navy SEALs and Marine Special Operations consistently on rotating deployments in Lebanon, constantly partnering and training with what we call the Lebanese Marine Commandos. Their symbol actually looks like a SEAL trident. I mean, they literally fashion themselves after us. By the way, so does South Korea SEALs, and so does the Filipino SEALs, Thai SEALs. They actually take our trident and make it, and they change it a little bit, and they sort of make it theirs. I mean, that's how close some of these relationships have become over the years. So this election is one to watch. We have a lot of interest in Lebanon, I think, becoming a more stable environment. You know, this used to be the Paris of the Middle East. It's actually a wonderful place. I've been there a number of times, and the people are great. It's a fascinating, chaotic, crazy place, and a beautiful, beautiful place as well. Staying on this region for a minute, the U.S. is easing restrictions on Syria while keeping some sanctions in place. So we're making progress. Again, the new HTS leadership is kind of saying all the right things that we want to hear, and in good faith, I think we're making progress. I mean, they're saying the right things in the sense that, look, we just want to focus on electricity and food and water. You know what? That's what we want to hear. We want to hear stability. And so the U.S. Treasury issued a 6-month license permitting limited transactions, including energy sales, while maintaining broader sanctions. So this is a cautious step forward, a cautious support for Syria's new leadership, while still holding some leverage over them as well. And I think that's probably the right move, if you're asking my opinion. I mean, the situation in Syria is pretty dire. Dire economic conditions, rampant poverty, food insecurity, years of conflict, sanctions, just a devastating 2023 earthquake. Forgot about that. International pressure to ease sanctions has grown because there's donor fatigue too. I mean, there's just constant worldwide donations to the humanitarian crisis, and probably including from us as well. So it would be nice to reconstruct the place again. Damascus also used to be this beautiful place. I mean, these are places. These are not like deserts in the Middle East. You have to understand. There's the Levant, which is Syria, Lebanon, Israel. Gorgeous places. It's not these gross deserts that you might sometimes think of in the Middle East. These used to be just absolutely gorgeous places to visit. And over the years, unfortunately, because of sectarian conflict and civil wars and all sorts of shit, well, they became less nice to visit. But maybe one day they can be nice again. That wraps up today's Sit Rep. Thanks for listening.